you're watching the Screaming Fish here, people, and once again, I'm here for you guys with yet another video, and this time, in this video, obviously, we are going to be taking a look at Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. This is either going to go really well, or really bad. Let's just, get on to the review and, yeah. The first Pirates of the Caribbean movie is one of my favourite adventure films of all time. It is unbelievably fun. Johnny Depp's performance was so charismatic, and to put it short, I absolutely love the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I'm a really big fan of that movie, obviously, I've just told you. But, as much as I hate to say it, this franchise has unfortunately gotten progressively worse with each sequel, and unfortunately, so has Johnny Depp's performance as Jack Sparrow. And to this day, I am still waiting for a Pirates movie that recaptures what the first movie did so brilliantly, which in a sense was basically everything. Anyway, it's time to ask that question that I always hate asking myself because I almost always have no idea whether or not I'm right. Does Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Men Tell No Tales recapture what made the first movie so damn good? Well, let's just start with the positives and just find out. To start with an obvious one, the music in this movie is fantastic. Hans Zimmer's iconic score for Pirates of the Caribbean will never fail to get me pumped up. Whenever the score came on in this movie, it always felt right. And similar to the other movies in this franchise, it pumped me up like nothing else. But other than that, it's just genuinely great to listen to. This movie is also really good looking. There are some really cool shots that did take my breath away, and of course the visual effects for the most part are spectacular. Aside from a few exceptions, the visual effects in this movie are almost flawless. From a technical standpoint, this movie really does shine. A lot of effort always goes into the visual effects, the music, the camera work, and just basically everything to do with the way the film looks and feels. And that effort really does pay off. Which brings me to my cons. Outside the huge amount of effort that must have gone into making this film look good, it feels like virtually no effort was put into anything else. And unfortunately, it really does show in a lot of the performances. Say what you will about Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow, but for me, in this film, watching him was like watching a cartoon character in a live-action movie, and not in a good way. There is definitely something about this character that Johnny Depp captured so brilliantly in the first film that he just can't seem to recapture in this film, or any of the other previous sequels except for maybe Dead Man's Chest. This character is drunk in almost every scene, and while that was funny the first time, it's just getting old now. This is by far Johnny Depp's worst performance as his character. I never felt like I was watching Jack Sparrow, I just thought I was watching a cartoon character in a Pirates of the Caribbean movie pretending to be Jack Sparrow, and now it feels like a parody of the character. He actually did more in this movie to make me feel annoyed by his presence than to actually make me laugh or care about him, and that brings me to my next issue with this movie. This is the most painfully unfunny movie in this entire franchise, and that's something I never thought I would say when I walked out of this movie. If there's one thing that even the other movies got right, it was a comedy. Even the ones I don't like managed to make me laugh at some points. But here in Dead Men Tell No Tales, the comedy falls flat on nearly every level. There were admittedly some jokes that made me chuckle at least, but aside from a very small handful of jokes, the comedy in this movie just fell flat. And I found myself going from feeling really awkward to just cringing so hard it actually hurt. Anyway, back to the performances. Brenton Thwaites is the dictionary definition of just fine. He's not by any means great, but his performance did have some strong points, and his motivations in this film were pretty interesting, but for the most part he just comes off as a fairly bland presence on screen. That was about as memorable as picking up a penny off the floor and thinking to yourself, I'm gonna be filthy rich, before you come to the realization that it's worth basically nothing. As for Kea Scodelario, I don't even know if I pronounced that right, I apologize if I didn't. I don't like to hate on actors or actresses or anything, I'm just here to criticize. But I'm sorry, she was terrible in this. She was so bland and forgettable, and she gave easily the worst performance in the entire film. Her character isn't that interesting either, she's just one of those really annoying characters that thinks she knows absolutely everything, because science is everything! There's even a very poorly developed romance that is set up between two of the characters in this movie that goes basically nowhere. When you realize those two characters are actually in love, you're going to be thinking, wait, where did that come from? It just comes completely out of nowhere, and it feels very out of place when compared to the rest of the movie. Javier Bardem as the main villain was just plain bland. He was just your standard guy who wants revenge on this person because he did something really bad to him, and he hates pirates. That's basically all there is to his character. I'm not even joking, that's it. He never really gets a chance to prove how evil he actually is. He never gets any proper time to shine, and on the whole, he's just a really poorly realized villain. David Wenham plays the most forgettable character in this movie. He's just there. He has almost no reason to be in this movie, and whenever he was on screen, I was either thinking to myself, who's this guy again? Or, why are you even here in this movie? Jeffrey Rush is the closest you're going to get to a great performance in this movie. He had a couple of cool scenes, and they actually do something good with this character that was actually kind of interesting. Unfortunately, the film just rushes through that plot point in order to speed up the runtime of this movie. And that brings me to yet another issue I have with this movie. It is baffling to me that the shortest movie in this entire franchise feels so unnecessarily long. I have no idea how they managed to accomplish that. As soon as we get to the part where they're all on their ships at sea, it becomes a giant messy chase scene with far too many side plots to even grasp what the heck is even going on. This film had me going from confused as to what was actually going on to just feeling plain bored. Things happen in this movie that make absolutely no sense both logically and continuity-wise, and it just derails any enjoyment this film had in the first 20 to 30 minutes, which wasn't even that much anyway, and even the action sequences have little to enjoy. The action consists of Johnny Depp prancing around on set like an idiot in front of huge explosions, poorly edited sword fights, and boring-ass ship battles. It never felt like there was any stakes in this movie. There was just never that sense of urgency or suspense in the action sequences. They just happened, and that was it. They are also very conventional in the way that they are choreographed, but to me, that's more down to bad directing, and yeah, I really mean that. From a directing standpoint, this movie flops. The direction of this movie was so sloppy and lazy, and it clearly shows in the action sequences. And the editing is just borderline lazy. I noticed so many continuity errors, not just in the plot, but just by the way the film was cut together. For example, there's a scene where a character is looking out to sea on his own ship, and behind him you can see another ship that is very far away on the horizon. As soon as the character turns around, that ship that was on the horizon only a minute ago is suddenly a few feet away from the other ship. It's things like that that just make me think about how badly cut together this movie actually is. However, the third act of this movie... Oh my days, the third act of this movie. For the majority of the third act of this movie, I was having very severe flashbacks to when I first watched Batman and Robin. Yeah. There are so many scenes in this movie, particularly in the third act, that are just there to fill up the runtime. And those scenes feel so uncomfortably out of place that it's actually jarring to watch them. I even found myself cringing at a lot of the jokes they put in those scenes to actually make those scenes mean anything, but it just fell flat so badly. I can't even grasp the fact that somebody took a look at the final draft of this script and said, this is gonna be a good movie, you know what I'm saying? Aside from how messy and uneven the movie is, it's basically your run-of-the-mill adventure movie. There's a powerful artifact that everyone's trying to find, and whoever finds it gets extreme power and can break any curse. Yeah, that's basically the driving force of this movie. Though, to its credit, there are a few things I did like about this movie, believe it or not, other than the way it looks. There's actually a really cool flashback scene that shows the villain's connection to Jack in this movie that was A, actually engaging, B, fun, and C, it featured what is probably one of the best computer-generated recreations of a young version of an actor I've ever seen on film. I would go see an hour and 58-minute long movie about that any day. And I will admit, the film does have a satisfying ending, not just because you're thinking, oh thank God it's over, but it also gives a fitting send-off to one of the characters in this movie. That was cool to see. Unfortunately, if I turned round to you and said that I actually enjoyed this movie, I would be lying to you like Theresa May. Because no, I did not enjoy this movie. It's basically 2 hours of poorly realised characters trying way too hard to be funny and instead coming off as idiots prancing around on set in poorly edited action sequences and terrible acting. All of which take place in a film that is trying way too hard to be fun, and in reality, there's no escaping the fact that what we have here is the dictionary definition of the word childish. Yeah, that's the word I would use to describe this movie. Childish. I would have liked this if I was 8 years old, but now when I'm watching this as a 15-year-old teenager, it feels stupid. I would say that we are way past the point where this franchise became a parody of itself, and we're now at the point where it's virtually impossible to watch these movies without being reminded of how brilliant it used to be before the later sequels came around and messed everything up. I'm just going to say it here and now, that this movie was a very disappointing experience for me. It comes nowhere close to being as good as the first movie, or even being better than the other 3 movies in this franchise. If you like the other movies in this franchise, you're probably going to like this. There are some cool scenes, and there are some funny jokes. It's not god-awful, even. It's beautiful to look at. But everyone else, just stay the hell away from this movie. Believe me, it's just garbage. Ah, that was terrible. Anyway, guys, have you seen Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Men Tell No Tales? What did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you think it was bad? Did you think it was somewhere in the middle? Did you think it was good? That'd be a first to hear. It's good to hear positive things. Maybe. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching this review. I do hope you liked it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And I will see you in the next one. Excuse me, I'm just gonna, moan to myself about how bad that movie is. Because it's bad. Goodbye, guys.